Have you ever wondered why, even after giving everything, you still end up emotionally submissive to someone who barely tries for you? Have you noticed how, in certain relationships, no matter how present, loyal, and passionate you are, you become invisible? Not like someone forgotten, but like someone used. Like a well-trained dog, loyal, domesticated, predictable, on a leash. And the worst part? You put it on yourself. Most men don't realize the exact moment they trade their emotional freedom for conditional affection. There's no shouting, no commands, no blatant humiliation. Just a series of small concessions, daily, silent. And then one day, you can no longer tell where your own will ends and her control begins. And it all started with one single mistake. Schopenhauer, one of the most brutally honest philosophers about female nature, had already warned us. A man who surrenders too much in the name of love becomes a slave to someone else's desire. Love, when misunderstood, doesn't set you free. It imprisons you. And if you're a man, that imprisonment usually comes with a smile, a "don't worry," and sex at the end of the day. In this video, we're going to expose, no sugarcoating, no filters, the fatal mistake that turns strong men into emotional servants. A mistake that isn't visible at first, but one that always, without exception, comes with a price. If you've ever felt that you love more than you're loved, that you give more than you receive, that you accept too much out of fear of losing her, this video is your mirror. And it may be your last warning before the leash tightens for good. Like this video, share it with a man who needs to wake up, subscribe to the channel, and comment below with one word that describes how you felt when you realized it was you who was being domesticated. Because today, we break the chain. No man starts out in chains. Nobody falls in love wanting to be controlled. It all begins with something that seems beautiful: care, commitment, reciprocity. You give yourself. You yield a little, then a bit more. And before you know it, what once was love becomes surveillance, emotional blackmail disguised as affection. What once was a choice now feels like an obligation. You start weighing your words, walking on eggshells, constantly seeking approval from someone who should love you freely. And you don't even notice, because it was gradual, because it came wrapped in affection. This is the fatal mistake, confusing devotion with submission. We're told love requires sacrifice, and it does. But real sacrifice is mutual. When it's one-sided, it becomes emotional slavery. You start bargaining your boundaries to keep someone close, and when that happens, the emotional balance breaks. She notices, even if unconsciously, that she has you, that you're tied, that there's no longer a risk of losing you. And from there on, the game changes. You're no longer a man. You're a utility. Schopenhauer already said it. A woman, in her essence, does not love the man. She loves what he represents. When she senses that the man has given everything, that there's no more challenge, that he's emotionally surrendered, she loses desire. The female instinct, as the philosopher pointed out, doesn't seek stability. It seeks dominance. And dominance is not what you say. It's what you radiate. When your energy says, "I'd do anything for you," her instinct replies, "Then you're already mine. Time to look elsewhere." Thus, most men still live under the illusion that the more kind, patient, and devoted they are, the more love they'll receive in return. But the female instinct doesn't operate under that logic. It thrives on contrast, on tension, on symbolic scarcity. And in your eagerness to be good, you become predictable, tame, and everything that is easily tamed becomes emotionally disposable. That's where the collar begins. Not physically, but mentally. You no longer make decisions freely. You act out of fear of upsetting her. You start making concessions you would never have considered at the start of the relationship. You allow small intrusions, small humiliations, small withdrawals of affection. And before long, you're addicted to the feeling that you have to earn the bare minimum. And any man who feels he must earn the basics is already emotionally shackled. The collar is never fastened abruptly. It's woven slowly, with praise, with affection, with calculated tenderness. In the beginning, it looks like attentive love. She likes to know where you are. She worries about who your female friends are. She protects you from situations that might cause conflict. You interpret this as care. But what seems like protection is often the seed of control. A subtle, smiling control that disguises possession as affection. And you, starved for validation, thank her for it. This is the invisible game. She creates the illusion that you're only worthy of love if you comply with certain terms. The woman who approaches with good intentions slowly reshapes you, steals your time, your voice, your essence. And by the time you realize it, you no longer have your own opinions. Everything you think has already passed through one mental filter. Will she like this? And that question, repeated daily, kills the most valuable thing in a man: his will. Schopenhauer understood that women, guided by an instinct for preservation and emotional strategy, seek to mold the man into their narrative. And the more you yield, the more you confirm your willingness to erase yourself just to keep the relationship alive. The problem is, in doing so, you become exactly what she despises. A predictable man, too safe, emotionally domesticated. The kind of man she respects publicly, but rejects privately. This emotional control takes many forms. Sometimes it's silent treatment. Other times, it's emotional blackmail disguised as vulnerability. If you loved me, you wouldn't do that. And you, conditioned to protect, to fix, to save, swallow your truth to avoid conflict. You begin to live according to her emotional weather. You stop existing as a man and become a thermometer for her moods. And the cruelest part is, she doesn't even do this consciously. The female instinct plays this game without planning. She simply senses that she can shape you. And she does. Because you allowed it. Because you gave in. Because you thought loving meant always saying yes. And now, even when something inside you screams for freedom, you hesitate. Because the collar is there, not on your neck, but in the fear of losing her. And the man who fears losing is already lost. The most painful part of all this isn't being manipulated. It's continuing to try while she no longer respects you. You feel it, in the eyes that no longer look for you, in the touch that lost its warmth, in the kiss that feels like a chore. But you insist. You give more. You stretch yourself thinner. You believe that if you're just a bit more understanding, she'll see you again. And you don't realize that it's that very behavior confirming your irrelevance. Because in the game of desire, too much presence becomes emotional absence. Women don't openly say they've lost respect. They show it in how they ignore your efforts, in how they dismiss your pain, in how they mock your vulnerability. They won't shout that they're bored. They'll just stop admiring you. And when admiration dies, no amount of love can bring it back. A man who lowers himself To win back a woman who already despises him, digs his own humiliation. He won't be loved. He'll be tolerated. Out of pity, out of convenience, out of habit. Schopenhauer claimed that a woman is, above all, an instinctive strategist. And when she feels she has total control over a man, when there's no challenge left, she emotionally detaches. Because her instinct doesn't crave goodness, it craves value. And value, to the female instinct, isn't measured by kindness. It's measured by scarcity, impact, and symbolic dominance. You can be the most loving man in the world, but if she doesn't feel like you could walk away, she'll never feel desire for you again. This is when emotional exhaustion sets in. You feel empty, but think it's your fault. You blame yourself. You think you need to be even better, more caring, more patient, and she takes advantage. Not out of malice, but because the system allows it. She feeds on your effort without giving anything back. And you cling to the memory of who she used to be, the one who admired you, who desired you. You refuse to see that that version is gone, that the look of admiration is now just a reflection of the past. And this is where the fatal mistake becomes permanent. You're no longer fighting for love. You're fighting for crumbs of respect. And even then, you don't get them. Because the man who accepts less than he deserves sends one clear message: I'm not worth more. And she understands and responds with indifference. Because once respect dies, there is no return. And the man who tries to revive a dead connection is only feeding his own downfall. She's still there, in the house, in the bed, on your social media. She still smiles in photos, replies to your messages, calls you love. But inside, she's already gone. And this is one of the cruelest blows a man can suffer. Being abandoned by someone who's still physically present. Because her body remains, but her soul has already left. And you feel it. In the emptiness that follows every hug, in the silence masked by shallow conversations, in the eyes that avoid depth. This is the moment she's already erased you from her future. She just hasn't said it yet, because she still needs something. Comfort, stability, routine. You've become support, an emotional cushion she rests on until something more exciting comes along. It's not malice, it's instinct. An instinct that seeks the best possible option. And when you're no longer that best, she doesn't rage, doesn't end things, doesn't say goodbye. She just keeps you nearby, while scanning the horizon for someone else. Schopenhauer said that a woman's love is rarely absolute. It's conditional, based on what the man represents. If he represents more than what she desires, he's cherished. If he represents less, he's discarded. And often, that discard isn't immediate. It's emotional. She disconnects. She detaches. She gradually becomes cold, impatient, indifferent. But you, still clinging to the early version of her, the one who admired you, who desired you, can't see it. You interpret everything as just a phase. The truth is, the female instinct is efficient. It's not tied to emotional memory. It operates in the now. And when she senses that you no longer have impact, that you no longer offer evolutionary advantage, that you no longer challenge her, she recalculates the path. And in that moment, even if she still sleeps beside you, she already belongs to another scenario, another dream, another man, even if he hasn't arrived yet. You've become a bridge, and every bridge has an expiration date. The cruelest part is that you're still trying, still making plans, still believing you can rekindle what's clearly dead. You think if you buy flowers, surprise her, change your behavior, she'll feel what she once felt. But you don't realize what died wasn't love. It was the perception of value. And love without respect becomes routine. And routine without admiration becomes prison. And you're locked up, trapped in the illusion that she still chooses you, when in reality, she's already choosing how to leave you. Little by little, you start speaking less, to avoid upsetting her. You start smiling more, even when you're exhausted, to keep the mood light. You begin to hide your frustrations, your fears, your real desires, all to avoid being a burden. You begin to disappear, not all at once, but piece by piece. You dull your colors, your presence, your fire. And you do all this with one pathetic hope in your chest, that if you become soft enough, flexible enough, maybe she'll value you again. She won't, because a man who erases himself to be loved no longer has anything left to spark desire. You stop recognizing the man in the mirror. The firmness that once defined you turns to hesitation. The authenticity that made you unique is replaced with convenience. You become predictable, too safe, harmless. And to the feminine instinct, that's synonymous with useless. Because, as Schopenhauer pointed out, a woman does not desire the nice guy. She desires the man who imposes presence, who does not ask permission to exist. And you're nowhere near that anymore. Every day that you spend trying to please her only reinforces the message that she's superior, that she is the prize, and you are the contestant, that she can do anything, and it is your job to adapt. And that reversal of value destroys any remaining admiration. A man who is always available, always agreeable, always moldable, broadcasts a lack of symbolic worth. He's not seen as a conquest, he's seen as a resource, and resources are used, never revered. Deep down, you know this, but you can't walk away, because she still gives you crumbs. A bit of affection here, a little warmth there, a night of sex to maintain the illusion. And you, starved for validation, accept it. And the more you accept, the deeper you sink. You begin to justify the unjustifiable, accept the unacceptable, and permit the unforgivable, until you can no longer tell where her desire ends, and your humiliation begins. And what's left? A fragmented man, a distorted reflection of who you used to be, a soul drained, with a forced smile on his face and a lump in his throat that never dissolves. And in this state, you're still trying to prove your worth. But it's too late. Because real worth is never proven. It is imposed. Through presence, through boundaries, through posture. And by letting all of that go, you only confirmed what she already suspected, that she could dominate you. And someone who can be dominated no longer inspires desire, only boredom. The most brutal moment isn't when she leaves. It's when you realize she left long before, and you refused to see it. When the realization hits, it doesn't arrive with a scream. It arrives in silence. A silence that cuts through your chest, like a knife. You feel that mix of shame and rage. How did I let it get this far? The answer doesn't hurt because it's complicated. It hurts because it's painfully simple. You betrayed yourself. You traded your dignity for lukewarm affection. And now, you have to pay the price. Most men, when they finally wake up, collapse. Some isolate themselves. Others drown in anger. Others try to compensate with promiscuity or wounded pride. But none of these paths lead to healing, because they all stem from the same original mistake, seeking outside what was lost inside. What you lost wasn't her. It was your core, your posture, your identity. You stopped being yourself to become what she wanted. And now, without her, you have no idea who you are. Schopenhauer said that pain is the instrument of awareness. Only those who suffer deeply have the chance to truly wake up. And the man who stares into that abyss discovers something terrifying, that it wasn't her who destroyed him. It was him. He allowed himself to be downgraded little by little in exchange for love. The deepest betrayal never comes from the other person. It comes from within, when you silence your truth to sustain an illusion. This is the turning point. The moment you understand that there is nothing left to rescue from the past, that apologies won't come, that remorse won't appear, that she won't suddenly realize your worth. Because if you still need her recognition to feel whole, you're still a prisoner. True liberation begins the moment you give up the need to be validated by someone who devalued you. When you decide you will never again beg for emotional crumbs. When you say, enough. But that decision has a cost. You'll feel empty. You'll feel alone. You'll even miss the pain. Because at least the pain made you feel something. But don't go back. That emptiness is the space for your reconstruction. It's scorched earth where no lie survives. It's the crossing. And only those who endure this emotional desert, without distraction, without false consolation, reach the other side. Whole men aren't born from love. They're born from collapse. And that is where your real story begins. After the collapse, there is silence. But it's in this silence that the first signs of strength are born. You stop trying to please. You stop chasing after messages, replies, or explanations. You're no longer emotionally available for negotiation. Not because you've gone cold, but because you've finally awakened. Pain has shown you that your worth was never in her presence, but in your absence. And for the first time in a long time, you hear yourself. You realize just how long you've been silent within. The reconstruction begins like this, not with speeches of triumph, but with the firm decision to never again beg for affection. You realize that everything you did to be accepted only made you predictable, that all your emotional concessions were read as weakness, and that a man's true power doesn't lie in excessive kindness, but in the ability to impose presence without seeking validation. The man who rebuilds himself doesn't return the same. He comes back harder, straighter, whole. Schopenhauer viewed the will as man's most indomitable force, and that will only fully awakens when you cut the cords of emotional dependency, when you understand that being good is not being submissive, that you can be generous, but only with someone who treats you as an equal. You can be patient, but never again with someone who treats you like a backup plan. You can love, but never again someone who has to be convinced to stay. The new you doesn't debate your worth. You radiate it. At this point, your presence changes. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to make a scene. You just are. And that alone disturbs. People feel it. Women notice. You no longer try to be interesting. You've become inaccessible to anything shallow. And that is magnetic. Not because you want to conquer, but because your energy no longer bows. And anything that isn't solid retreats. You no longer return as the ideal man. You become the man she can't control. The kind of man who, if she loses him, knows she'll never find another like him. Because you no longer adapt. You no longer lower your head. You no longer trade your essence for a promise of love. The new you doesn't beg. You impose. And that's exactly why, now, you've become unforgettable. When a man stops living to please, he becomes a presence that doesn't bend. And that's where true respect is born. You're no longer there to be the nicest, the most helpful, the most understanding. You are whole. And that, in a world used to bendable men, is unsettling. Women notice. They feel that they're no longer facing someone who will beg for attention. They're facing someone who, if he leaves, never comes back. And that makes her think twice before playing with your loyalty. This new presence is quiet. You speak less. You observe more. You choose with precision where you go, who you engage with, and what you tolerate. And that's exactly why your energy begins to affect the room. You enter a place and don't need to fight to be noticed. Because the man who rebuilt himself in silence, who touched rock bottom and came back by himself, carries a kind of power that can't be taught. It's earned through pain. And that power cannot be faked. Schopenhauer once said that true nobility isn't measured by how others see us, but by the loyalty we have to ourselves. And that's exactly what you've become. A man loyal to himself, who doesn't apologize for existing, who doesn't lower his head to keep anyone, who doesn't change to be wanted. You've become the opposite of what you once were. And ironically, now you are exactly the kind of man every woman wants. Not for convenience, but for essence. And with that comes the reversal. The woman who used to mold you now tries to adapt. Not because she fears losing you, but because she realizes you're no longer available for emotional games. You listen to her calmly, but don't get drawn into drama. You may still feel something, but you no longer let your feelings violate your principles. You're capable of love, but if she crosses your limits, you leave. No warning, no argument, no return. And it's this lucid coldness that separates strong men from the fragile. You become the man she remembers in silence. The name that comes up in comparisons. The presence no replacement can erase. Because you didn't just leave memories, you left contrast. And contrast is what defines the unforgettable. Not because you were perfect, but because you were firm, because you were rare, because you weren't domesticated, and above all, because you never again accepted the leash you once willingly wore. True freedom isn't about being alone. It's about being whole. It's about being able to love without kneeling, about offering your presence without begging to be kept. A man who has known the leash, who has bowed out of fear of being left, who has begged for scraps, who has been erased while still breathing. Once this man wakes up, he never goes back, because now he understands. And those who understand, command. You no longer need to prove you are enough. You are. The world might not recognize it right away. Women might not see it at first glance. But your firmness speaks for you. Your selective absence has become your greatest statement. You don't need to compete anymore, or shapeshift, or explain yourself. Because what you carry now is the raw truth of a man who rebuilt himself from nothing. And that no one can take away. Schopenhauer saw suffering as the gateway to self-knowledge. But what he didn't say outright, and what you now live in your own skin, is that there comes a point when suffering ends, when pain gives way to presence. And this presence isn't for show. It doesn't crave the spotlight, but it's impossible to ignore. The man who has walked through fire and didn't run carries a silence that intimidates, a calm that commands, a posture that rejects any form of control. You're no longer in the game. You're not chasing validation. You don't seek revenge because you don't need to. You don't hate because you understand. You don't beg because now you choose. And a man who chooses with clarity becomes rare. And what's rare becomes unforgettable. That's why, even if she finds others, even if the world moves on, you will remain. Not as a sentimental memory, but as contrast, as reference, as boundary. Now, look back with conviction. See the leash you once accepted. See the man you once were. And be thankful. Because it was there, in the silent humiliation, that your rebirth began. The man who made it this far is no longer an option for anyone. He is a destination. And if you recognize this journey, if these words cut through you like a blade of recognition, then this video wasn't just content. It was a mirror. Like this video now. Share it with a man who is still chained and doesn't see it. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to stay strong with us on this path of clarity. And comment below with one word that captures the mark this truth left on you. Because here, we don't build followers. We build men no one can erase.